Hi everybody, so I was in charge of chapter 3, and chapter 3 is about chunking up your content. And that sounds really gross, but I actually really liked the chapter and I really appreciated this way of teaching. I think that this is brilliant. It makes me think of, I don't know if you've ever seen Matilda. It was one of my favorite movies as a kid, but there's one little boy who really likes chocolate cake. And the principal always has a slice of chocolate cake with her lunch. It's been a while since I've seen it, but from what I remember, he sneaks a bite of one of her slices of cake. And she is like, well, I'm going to make you a whole cake that you're going to have just for yourself. And so he gets so excited. And then she makes him eat the entire cake. And of course, he's a little boy and he can't eat an entire chocolate cake. So he gets really sick. The way that this kind of made sense to me is when you are teaching new information to your student, you don't want to do an informational dump where you just give them all of the content all at once, because they're going to get frustrated, they're going to miss things, there's going to be things that they don't understand, but because you're doing an information dump, they're not able to, or they don't feel comfortable stopping you and saying, hey, can we go back? I don't understand. And so with this, what you're going to do is you're going to splice up your information or your content or really whatever you're trying to teach them into smaller sections, basically, or chunks as this chapter describes them. And you're going to give them processing time, which is so important for students. This way, once you teach chunk by chunk, the students are able to fully understand and fully appreciate the chunk, basically. And if this is done correctly, you'll have students making predictions about the next chunk or making predictions of how they connect together, asking questions, explaining to other students the chunk and summarizing it in their own words. I think this is really important because it definitely gives students the option to really take ownership of their own education and really be hands-on in the classroom when they're just learning, and you're not having to bring in any manipulatives or anything. This could just be a verbal way to teach a class where your students are staying hands-on. And so the two strategies I picked were reciprocal teaching and sequence graphic outline. Now, I'm not sure how this would work in my classroom just because I am in a 4th grade math, social studies, science. When I was there, mainly it was Fridays, so it was really just math with maybe a little bit of science if they had time for it. It also is a co-teaching classroom. In my morning class, we had like 37 students, and in my afternoon class, we had 42. But we also had me, both teachers, another student aide, a ESL teacher, and a special needs teacher. So it was super busy. But we did a lot of small group work, which would be great for reciprocal teaching. The reciprocal teaching strategy, I think, is actually really cool. An easy way to explain it would just be the students are going over the chunk and summarizing it and asking questions about it in smaller groups. So what you would do is when there's new information or a new chunk, you'd have a small group of students and you could have them pick the students, or pick their own group. You could have a random number generator pick the students, for each group. But you would have one designated leader for each group. Again, you could have it random, you could have it by who's the oldest, who's the youngest, or you could do it in a way where you know that this student is the most ahead so that they could lead it better. And then you're going to have the students do predictions of this chunk what's going to happen in the next chunk. And once they've all made predictions, you're going to have the leader ask some questions about this specific chunk. And then they're all going to work together as a group to answer these questions. And once they feel confident in their answers, they're going to pick another student. And this student is not going to be the leader. It's going to be just one of the other students, and they're going to summarize the chunk. And they're also going to reword their questions and answers in a way that flows better, that goes with the summary of the chunk. And then they're going to get back together, and they're going to make predictions of the upcoming chunk, and then you're going to teach the upcoming chunk, and then it's all going to happen all over again. The reason that you want to have a leader with this is so that every student is asking questions, answering questions, making predictions. Every student is working with the group, and that everyone's being heard, but also that so no one is speaking over one another, no one is not understanding it. But I think a great way also that the leader could do in this is if one student is not really explaining their thought correctly, they could have the leader explain it in a different way where all of the students can understand. Now, I'm not sure how this would work in a math classroom. I think a great way or a great option you have with this is word problems. You could have them break each sentence up, or maybe each operation up. But I think that this would probably work best in a social studies or language arts setting. My next strategy is sequence graphic outline. So this is actually a non-linguistic strategy, which I think that this could really help some students with order. So what you would do is you'd have boxes, and you'd have one box with an arrow that goes to another box, and that box would have an arrow that goes to another box in a line or in a flowing way where you can see that one box leads to the next box. And this, you could have it where you have your students fill it out where each chunk or each box is a summarized chunk, or it's their thought process of a specific chunk. I think that this would definitely work best in the math class or the math aspect of math problems with multiple operations, or math problems that have X, Y. In this way, if it has multiple operations, each box will have one operation and then the next operation and the next operation. Or if they have X's and Y's, they could have one box that's grouping all of the X's together and one box that groups all of the Y's together. Again, I think that this would probably work best in a science class or a social studies class. I feel like math is really tricky with finding strategies, especially in chunk content. But I really thought that this was such an interesting chapter, and I really appreciated the emphasis on giving student processing time, and I thought that they had some great strategies to work with this.